Hello, everyone. Glad you can join us. So, imposter syndrome, it isn't about being perfect. It's about feeling like a fraud, even when you aren't one. Frankly, it's all in our heads. It's the made up stories intended to protect ourselves, but instead, it's actually bringing us a lot of pain, potentially bringing us to our knees in some cases. And the thing is with imposter syndrome is you are 100% not alone. And one of the reasons for me deciding to do this session was that a few weeks ago, I had another session which was focused on leadership acceleration. And the number of people who was messaging saying, I'm presented with this scenario and I'm suffering from self-doubt and I'm doubting my own abilities and I've got this imposterous feeling, feeling of getting caught out. All those things made me think, right, I know this is rife because the amount of people that I work with who suffer from this is unreal. So it's why I thought I would do it. So if anyone ever tells you that they have never suffered from self-doubt, then frankly, they don't understand what it is, or they are potentially not being truthful. So here in this session, the aim is that I'm going to arm you with some pointers, some guidance to help you to work to overcome this. So here's what we're going to cover off today. I first want to thank you for joining, for taking the time out of your evening. My intention in all these sessions that I run is that I want you to walk away from this having experienced a ton of value. So I want to provide you with as much guidance, as much information as I possibly can. I want to raise a bunch of challenges that I'm experiencing with the people that I work with, and also some of the resolution points towards those. I think it's really important that there's this kind of level set around a lot of experiences that are going on, because sometimes we can feel alone. Sometimes we can think that this is only something that I'm experiencing, that I'm feeling. But oftentimes it's not the case. In fact, probably all the time, it's not the case. I'd also like to introduce you to an academy that I am starting up as well, which is focusing on leadership and life acceleration. Now, throughout the session, no questions are off limits. There's the Q&A function. So if you just drop any questions in there, I will be pausing at different intervals and basically reading that question panel. So please do ask anything that you feel as though you need to. So I just want to ask to begin with, and I'll start off the poll. So what are the reasons that you decided to come along today? So there's a few pre-prepared statements within there, but just feel free to just basically put against some of these as to kind of some of the reasons. And it should be a multi-select as well, so feel free to multi-select. Okay, so we've got quite a few for overthinking. Any others? Self-doubt, yeah. So it's typical things that are kind of common with this theme that we're going through today of imposter syndrome, self-doubt, overthinking, and so on. So yeah, thank you for sharing. Definitely means that you're in the right place with this webinar and this content. So what is it that I do? So I'm conscious that you may have encountered this webinar through, it could have been some ads, it could have been through LinkedIn. I know I'm messaging a lot of you, I see names there, messaging a lot of you on LinkedIn about this kind of thing, inviting you directly to some of the events. It may have been you came across it on the website. Either way, this may be the first time that you've properly interacted with me. So what I typically do is I work in the corporate world, and I also work with people in a one-on-one and also a group capacity in terms of helping them to develop their leadership skills, but not just their leadership skills from a workplace perspective. It's about looking at it from a life angle as well. I don't like to separate the two. And I don't mean that from work becomes life. What I mean is that a lot of the skills that we can learn and develop as leaders, they are widely applicable to us in our personal life as well. Now, I've worked personally with people who want to get promoted, people who want to change career, transition into leadership, maybe become more aware of their emotions, their thoughts, their feelings, and so on, which will be a hot topic that we cover off today. It could be the work-life balance, transitioning to self-employment. The list goes on. Like, it's just a whole range of topics that people come and work with me on. Now, historically, it's been one-on-one, but there has been a lot of group sessions that I've done, particularly within Salesforce. And now this kind of changes a little bit because I've begun to ask myself some questions about how I can add value to basically more people. So the aim for today, what we're aiming to get to today, is to look at some of the key challenges that I observe that people are facing within their career and within their life. Similar to some of the things that you outlined in the poll, so suffering with self-doubt, overthinking, and so on. Outlining of why it's essential that we begin to resolve those challenges, because it might not be quite clear to us whilst we're experiencing them, but these do have quite serious effects and impacts on our growth, on our career, on our happiness, and so on. It's identification of some of the actions that are maybe being missed to actually work to resolve these. And then finally, that exploration of a well-trodden path that we can all follow. So who am I? I've mentioned earlier that you may have come across this webinar through a number of different channels. But just to give a little bit of background into me for people who it is the first time of interacting with me. So I'm Stephen Baines. I have founded this little practice, Stephen Baines Coaching. It's something that's been bubbling away for this last couple of years in different guises. And it's this way that I could give back by kind of blending some of my mindfulness teacher expertise, some of my psychology expertise, neuroscience, but then also that knowledge and experience from the corporate world as well. So I've got over 15 years experience in corporate leadership type positions. This is all the way from project leadership up to team leadership as well. I've been practicing mindfulness for well over 20 years. It was actually a pretty tough time at university when I broke my leg that I discovered some of these practices. And to this day, they are the things that help me to become the person that I am today, without a shadow of a doubt. And it's been 5 years as a teacher with this. So I'm on quite a good journey to help people in this space too. I'm an ICF ACC certified coach. What this means for people who aren't aware of how ICF work, it's an accrediting body for coaches. So I don't want to or ever intend to be one of the people who wake up in the morning and say, I want to do this today. I feel as though in order to add value to people, I have to have the knowledge, the insight, the practice to be able to deliver the promises that I basically offer to people. And in light of that, I just recently did a neuro-linguistic programming certification, which is fascinating. Some of the tools and techniques to allow us to basically control some of our inner dialogue and use it to our advantage rather than our disadvantage. As I mentioned, I've had a background in business leadership, but recently expanded that out into psychology and neuroscience with a master's at King's College London. Now, the vision that I have is to simplify human development. And some of the things we'll come on to, which I'm sure you're experiencing, there's the overwhelm. And it's about cutting right through that and getting into the part where we can stimulate action. Now, I will hold my hand up and say that nothing that I do talk about here is absolute rocket science. But I know there will be a few aha moments, because just in light of what I've just mentioned there with the overwhelm of information, sometimes we just need someone to allow us to just see the wood in the trees. So over the course of my career, both inside tech and also with a coaching orientation, I've engaged quite a lot of people. And what I've noticed is a few different things going on here. One of the first and fundamental ones, which I think COVID brought to life quite a lot, is that there's generally a misalignment between people's work and people's life. We may have seen a couple of years ago, which has started to peter out a little bit now, the term the Great Resignation. And this is where people begin to realize that there was more to life than the work that they was doing. And I was kind of one of those. So I have 2 young children, and my eldest is 4.5. So she was about a year old as we went into COVID. And I was working away all the time. I was working away 3-4 days a week. And then I get to spend 3-4 days with my wife and her. And COVID really brought it to life of what I was missing out on. And it was from that moment that I actually changed my outlook, my ethos, that it was shifting into something that mattered more to me. And what it became was my work is now a much lower priority than what my family is. I think in essence it always was. It just wasn't quite that clear cut. And now whenever I travel is by exception. There has to be a very, very good reason as to why that is actually the case, why I'm needing to travel. People are also experiencing a tougher landscape for progression in the company that they work for. This again, it's been especially tough since COVID and this recent economic slowdown, that we went through this phase where there was a lot of jobs throughout, particularly in the tech sector, throughout COVID. But then after that, it's kind of come into that bit of a slowdown, and things are really a lot harder to progress. I know what I've seen in some companies is kind of really tightening the clamps on promotions and progressions, making it really hard for people to rise the ranks. In line with the topic of this session, there's that self-doubt. There's the lack of belief in themselves. Maybe people are looking around them and thinking, look at all the achievements that I'm seeing people have. Like, why is it that I maybe haven't got any of these? There's then that overwhelm of information, the overload. It can sometimes make us feel a little bit indifferent, a little bit unworthy, a bit self-critical of ourselves, to say, I should be doing more. But then at what point do you stop? At what point do you stop doing more? So why is it really important that we need to resolve these challenges? So, these aforementioned issues, they are kind of incredibly important for us to resolve, as fundamentally there are three things that will happen if we don't. The first one is that we will stagnate in our growth. So as an example, your lack of self-belief, your lack of confidence, it will undoubtedly be seeing that you get passed up for progression. Could be significant opportunities, could be promotions. Now, in the build-up to my last session, as I said before, I heard a lot of people saying that this is a huge topic for them. And that there was one person who reached out saying that she was just coming back from maternity leave and struggling to get back into the swing of things. The other one is around performance. So as an example, it may be that you think that you have it all together until that key big moment. Could be a big presentation, could be a final submission of a deliverable, could even be you speaking up in meetings. And this will be when you're there second guessing yourself. Your self-doubt kicks in, your anxiety is going to overdrive. What if Joe Blog says this? What if this person does this? What if nobody turns up? What if the leader that I'm presenting to just says flat out, no, you've wasted my time? All these thoughts can be bubbling up in our mind, and it can impact our performance, because instead of focusing on the things that we can do right, we're focusing on correcting all these issues that don't frankly even exist. Now, I will say some of this is good. Some of this kind of guessing of yourself can be useful because it can help to protect us. But if we're focusing entirely on that, that's when it becomes a problem. Now, you'll also be experiencing a potential loss of control. So as an example, the thoughts here, they're defaulting to these imposter-like feelings, second-guessing your abilities and seeing this become a default mode for various areas of not just your professional life, but also your personal life too. This is where whenever we experience something, say that we're giving a presentation, say we're giving a demonstration of something, and we do 98% of this presentation, this demonstration, awesomely. We're so good. We absolutely smash it out of the park. But there was a glitch in one part of it. Maybe we didn't say something that we intended to. Now, where's our heads going to be at? For the vast majority of people, it's actually on that 2%. Forget about the 98% that we did so well. It's gravitating towards that very small percentage, and we're beating ourselves up about it. And the thing is, this is the norm for the vast majority of people. So I expect that this is resonating because I know this session has come from a lot of feedback from people experiencing these exact same things. And one of the reasons for me emphasizing these points is that I wanted to normalize these experiences. So as a result of this, what are the actions? What are the ways that we can begin to think? So yeah, I experienced this stuff. Like, how is it that I can begin to resolve this? Now, there's two key pillars here. So one is about awareness and the other is about your growth. So I'm going to go down into each of these individual pillars. So first, we're going to do awareness. Now, there's three areas within this. The first one is about grounding yourself. So this is a need to recognize that present moment awareness is one of the most powerful practices that you can adopt. Now, overthinking, it can simply be killing your dreams. But the thing is, presence can eradicate this. Because all overthinking is just looking into the future and thinking about scenarios that haven't even happened yet. And often worst case scenarios. This is the very basis of anxiety. So by grounding ourselves, what we're essentially doing is pulling our mind back into this present moment. And some simple ways that we can do this is with just some breathwork techniques to just ground us in that present moment. Is then building discipline. So this is about setting the habits that help success come just that little bit easier for you. It's where things come second nature. So I've got a story on this one. So I run long distances. I've been doing, it's called the World Majors. So it's 6 marathons around the world. I have Boston coming up in April, and I've just done Tokyo back in March. Now, what would always happen was I would train and I'd be going up to 34 kilometers throughout my training before the event. And then I would just completely tail off after the event. I'd drop down to, instead of it being the 50, 60 kilometers a week that I was doing before, I'd be down to maybe like 10 or 15. And I've begun to ask myself, so why does that happen? Why is it that I just lose interest, lose discipline? And I thought there must be something that I can do because I really enjoy running. Like, running is kind of really a bit of a mental health reliever for me. It's a way for me to connect with nature. It's a way for me to connect with my body, the body, mind, all that kind of thing. It's all goodness. And I thought, so what can I do? And I had a chat with my wife about this, about how we can work things around the kids' school routine, whilst also helping them to build discipline. So what I decided to do was every morning, I would get up early, usual time. I would get them ready for school. And then my wife would take over and she'd be the one that actually does the school run. And I would, just before they're leaving, I would go for a run. The run would be typically for about 40 minutes to an hour. But what I would do is the kids will be at a window at the top of the house and they'd wave me off on that run every single morning. They loved it. They absolutely love seeing their dad going out for a run every single day. And now from a discipline perspective, this serves two purposes. So one is it means that I feel compelled to do it every single day because they're having their fun saying bye to dad as he's going off for his run. But it also tunes into something much bigger, which is a reason why. And the reason why, again, is twofold. So one is longevity for me. It's building up my health and fitness, but also it's instilling something in them. Because what I want them to do when they're like, one's 2.5 and one's 4.5, is that I want them to feel as though that they want to in the future go out and exercise in the morning. And whether it's throwing it down with rain, whether it's bright sunshine, whether it's icy, snow, whatever outside, I'm always out there going for my morning run. And this is the important part with it for me, that I said to my daughter the other day, who was out walking the dog, I said, would you one day want to come for a run with Dada? And she said, yeah, in a really excited voice. So it's already starting to work. So building discipline, it doesn't need to just be about you. Think about something extrinsic that you can begin to attach to with this as well. Now, the third one there is about self-regulation. It's about not being in reactive mode all of the time. It's about seeing things as they arise and basically controlling our responses instead of just being reactive to them. So we're now just going to dive into each one of these. I'm going to talk about the problem and then also what the solution specifically is to these things. So about grounding yourself. Now, what I find is that a lot of people that I work with are typically operating in their heads. They're doing things at often a high level. And it's quite simply because we're drowned in information. We've got that overload of information and so many things going on that we essentially need to multitask. Now, what that means is we're operating at that level. We're never going deep. We're never sitting and strategically thinking about what the next move is. We're just tactically responding to things. Whereas what we can do with grounding ourselves is we can recognize that presence is hugely important to our growth. It's actually critical to our growth. And as an example, when some of my best ideas come to me when I have space. And one of the times that I have space, as I'm sure most of you do too, is when you're showering. You can't take your phone in the shower. You can't take your laptop in the shower. You're basically disconnected from the entire world whilst you're in the shower. So the only thing you can potentially do is just think. And that's the thing. That's where a lot of the good ideas come from here. But if you can program your mind to think strategically in the downtime that you have, then this is what can actually help you to grow. Because this is where your new ideas can come up, your new innovations and so on. About building discipline. Similarly, it's a struggle to basically prioritize effectively. In relating to self-doubt, this is where it can really overcome them. People are regularly doubting what their next move is. Some of the things that I'd mentioned before about as we're going into a big presentation, a big demonstration, this is where the overthinking steps in. Now, I was working with probably the best leader that I've ever worked with a few years ago. And I found it absolutely astonishing that he came to me and says, I feel as though I'm going to get caught out. I'm like, you've got it so together. And there's even a coaching colleague of mine. He's an MBE and he's been coaching for well over a decade, started up charity organizations. And he said he's sat in a room where he's a university board member. And he's like, he's just so out of place. He feels as though he's going to get caught out and maybe kicked out of the room. I just find it incredible that, everybody, regardless of the position, is suffering in some way from this level of self-doubt. Now, relating to discipline, a lot of people are missing the why behind what they're striving for. So just like the story that I mentioned before with my children, tuning into something that is extrinsic can be incredibly valuable. Because if we aren't getting hooked into what it truly means to get a win under our belt, then it's quite easy for us to focus on the negatives. And when we focus on the negatives, discipline is impossible to instill because we will always be thinking up the excuses as to why we can't do it. So the solution here is tune into the why. Make it extrinsic. It can be intrinsic too. Making it extrinsic makes it so you've got a little bit of accountability. And that's a key element of all of this. Accept that things will not always go to plan. And that is perfectly fine. If ever you do slip up, it's never a failure. It never is a failure. What it is, it's a learning opportunity. It's an opportunity for you to look at what it is that you've done and course correct next time to make sure that that doesn't happen again. Now, that my daughter that I mentioned was out on a bike ride a number of weeks ago. It was a 5-kilometer route and she got halfway through, bless her, and she said, I've had enough. I've had enough of this. So I went down to her level and explained to her how it will be harder for you to wheel your bike the rest of the way than it will be for you to ride. At that point, I was testing her. I was seeing if she would get back on her bike and ride, or if I did actually need to carry that bike around the rest of the lake with me. So what we did is stopped instead. We fed the ducks for a little bit. We waited for my wife and son to catch up. And then she set off going again off her own accord. And when we got to the end of a stop, I said to her, are you done? And she said, no, we don't give up, Daddy. And that really lit me up because it's like she understood. She understood that discipline is a key element. And if a 4.5-year-old can get it, then all of us can too. And it's something that we kind of reminisce about quite a bit. But I always remind her that when something's difficult and she says, I'm tired, I can't do it, I remind her of that day and say, remember when you got back on your bike after you said that you didn't want to do it, that you was too tired. So then we have the self-regulation. Now, this is a skill that I 100% see lacking across the board. It's incredible how many people who attend my workshops, these are typically the group workshops, that find the practices life-changing. Now, one of my mindfulness friends, we met up for a catch-up a few weeks ago, and he was telling me this, the workshops that he runs in Hewlett-Packard. He always does a minute to arrive before the sessions. And people come to him and say, you know, what I really love about your sessions is this minute to arrive that you do at the start. And we had a bit of a giggle about this because whatever it is that you are doing, whether you are about to get in the car, about to get your coffee from Starbucks, whether you're about to walk in the office, take the dog for a walk, pay for your shopping, you all have access to 1 minute. 1 minute to just pause, take a few deep breaths, then just reflect on things going on around you. And that's what they were finding so valuable. Something that every single one of them has almost infinite access to. Now, the problem in this space is that people aren't necessarily prioritizing the people skills, or they're not looking after themselves emotionally, some physically too. And I always point to one example here of listening being a key example. Now, the majority of people listen to respond, not to engage. And this, along with shortened attention spans of things like TikTok is bringing about, basically means most people are operating a fight or flight. They're catching half of a sentence, thinking they understand it, and then reacting on that part. Now, the solution here is that we essentially have a choice in how and when we respond. Pausing regularly is super, super important, as we've explored. But so is listening deeper, more intently, asking questions, not assuming, taking time to reflect. Journaling, if you've ever done any journaling, incredibly powerful practice when combined with a little bit of introspective meditation. Now, all of this will enable you to think beyond your self-doubt. Now, this latter part about reflection is crucial, and we have an exercise that I'm going to plant on you to take away on this, a powerful exercise. And it's a reflection-based exercise, and one that I know you will go, this is just unreal, but it's so simple, so simple. So once again, a reminder, just if you do have any questions at all, just pop them into the Q&A. I'm happy to answer them at different points as they come up. I've got it open on the chat on the side. So next up, I'm going to explore the owning your growth pillar. Now, ownership is another theme that, again, a lot of people get lost around. And ownership and accountability is one of the main reasons that people work with me, and frankly, main reasons why they work with any coach. I'll explain. So to grow exponentially, we essentially need to have two ingredients. The first one is about the mindset. This is where people who come and work with not just me, but any coach have maybe felt stuck for quite a while. They're getting distracted by a lot of things that are going on around them. Maybe they're finding it easy to lose motivation and discipline. And then there is this path, defining the path. This is maybe not knowing the exact steps that we need to take. I know one of the most valuable things, probably the most valuable thing I get out of the relationship that I have with my coach is he's so good with his sideline view of the world. So the analogy that I always use with him is that I'm out there on the field. I'm the one playing the game. But he's the coach on the sidelines, seeing all of the plays, all of the runs, and basically pointing out to me what it is that I'm not seeing. So a few things within these. So under the mindset, limiting beliefs. It's one of the reasons why we're here. Now, this is the transition from engaging in the behaviors that are limiting our growth to just looking at them, sitting back, just understanding them a little bit, maybe learning from them. There's always a reason why a limiting belief exists. Now, oftentimes it does stem back to some kind of childhood experience that we've had that has kind of manifested itself in different ways. But it doesn't mean that they can't be overcome. It's just sitting with and understanding some of these elements. There's then the proactive versus reactive elements. So focus on delivering value. And this is with an action-oriented mindset. So rather than waiting for things to happen, create the space to think. And then when you think, look for the ideas, the innovations, there may be new ways of doing things. And then there's the moving from independent to codependent. So recognizing the power of accelerated learning and doing this by working in groups of people who have similarities to you, who have shared experiences, who are aiming for similar things. My wife's business was one of these. So at the early parts of this year, it was struggling a little bit in terms of growth. And she was in one group on Facebook who all the people did in this one group was basically complain about the things that were happening to them. There were never any solutions. It was all complaining about how they dropped in visibility, how they'd seemingly not been selected for some of the ads, how all these things were happening to them. There were never any solutions. And what we found was there was a group, a much stronger group, a bigger group of people who were actively trying things. They was experimenting. They were trying new things. And this was accelerating learning because she could join that group and go, well, these people who are in a similar market to me, they've tried all this stuff and it hasn't worked. So I'm going to try this. And it's meant, it may have been down to this, we're not entirely sure, but she's actually had the best November and December that she's ever had in that business. This is the power of codependence, that we can accelerate our journey if we are there to learn alongside and with other people, not just by ourselves. So then in defining the path, there's this moving from bold to granular. I always implore everybody to have what I term a big, hairy, ambitious goal. This is something that should be so incredibly wild, so scary that you probably can't even comprehend how you will get there. And this is the fun of it, that this is when we have that big, hairy, ambitious goal, that we're able to look to try and scale this back to the most granular of steps. So we potentially know on a month-by-month basis what we can do to move that forward ever so slightly. Taking 1,000 steps is a lot more valuable than taking 10. For many reasons. Mostly because we will see frequent wins. We will see the successes as we're going. We'll be able to look back and look at all the different thousands, hundreds of thousands of different actions that we've taken that have all either worked or not. And it's the other is the time frame. The fact that if we're going for smaller steps towards our goals, then that could be a mindset struggle because success will not come as frequent. We'll not be able to test, we'll not be able to course correct as much. I've mentioned about emotional intelligence. Now, focusing on these skills is crucial. And as I mentioned right at the start with this, the focus on mindfulness, emotional intelligence, and so on is one reason why I am the person that I am today. I definitely wouldn't be in the work that I'm doing have the skills that I have the qualifications that I have, if it wasn't for that discovery of mindfulness back in 2006. I even say breaking my leg and hitting a bit of a depressive state was basically the catalyst in all of this. Now, this alone, I think, is one thing that can 10x a lot of people's results if we're focusing on the softer skills. Then we have the accountability side of things. Recognizing that it'll be a lot more difficult to get to where you need to be if you are doing so on your own. And this could involve, it could be a coach, could be mentors, could be leaders, could be peers, could be family members. Just don't go alone. Just make sure you are sharing your goals, sharing your vision with people. You never know who else might be striving to go down that same path as you. And as I mentioned in that previous story, you can learn from others a lot quicker than you can learn for yourself. Leverage is key. So we've come quite a way in exploring quite a few little nuggets here. I hope you're taking notes on some of this stuff. So what we've covered off is that there's this stark misalignment in people's passions and work. There's often a lack of tangible progress. It's particularly getting harder in this last year or two to get progress. There's the self-doubt and the imposter syndrome. This has been rife. It's the reason why you're here today. There's this overload of information, not necessarily knowing what the right thing is that we need to do. What this does is lead to stagnation. It could be career and life, performance issues, maybe that people are feeling a little bit indifferent. Maybe also a bit of loss of control over things that matter most. So then to resolve this, what we've explored is looking at grounding, presence, present moment awareness. Some key skills of just focusing on the breath, just to bring yourself into that present moment whenever it seems though some of those thoughts are getting a little bit out of control. There's building discipline, learning to self-regulate, emotional intelligence skills right there. Relating to that, building up that mindset, creating a little bit of that positivity, positive self-talk. Instead of being our own worst critic and focusing on that 2% of something that we may get wrong, let's flip the coin and focus on that 98% that we did awesome instead. Learn from that 2%, but focus on that 98%. In turn, what these do, these enable us to open up our awareness. It's being present in that moment. It's not being reactive, being proactive. Owning your growth, so as well knowing the pathway that you're going to go down. So my job here today is to basically give you enough of a base to work from. And I hope you're getting a lot from this so far, but it's also to basically say the truth as to what's going on out there. I think I've definitely been quite truthful in at least what a lot of the people that I work with are experiencing. And to summarize, there's this mass time wasting going on, procrastination that's basically driven by fear. Fear that is not really founded in anything of substance other than thoughts that are going on in our heads. The easy way out is to procrastinate because it means that we potentially don't suffer that pain. But what we don't see is the real pain that we are suffering when we procrastinate, which is we're not moving forward with our goals. Now, the emotions tend to be the master. And this is where, if we're focusing on those negative emotions, then we're not really truly benefiting. We're not truly experiencing life, kind of thing. We don't really spend the time to understand those emotions, to sit with them, figure out what they truly mean. And it's the same for our thoughts. It's like our minds are regularly in overdrive. This is where anxiety is rife. scenarios that are frankly a far cry from reality. Mentioned about this too high level focus, that we would rather multitask to get more done because it feels like we're making progress. But instead, we're operating at this very high level. We never or rarely go deep. As a result of all of this, we're thinking tactically, have a short-term focus. It's about the next quick win. People are giving up far too easy. So now when I engage with people, I typically work around these issues. And it's evident that there's only really one thing that truly matters that most people are missing. But I find it better to actually show this than talk about it. Now, on this slide, there are several people who I've worked with over this last 2 to 3 years that have come to me with all pretty much the same challenges. And what we did throughout all of these is we explored what their present experiences looked like. We identified where it was that they wanted to be, looked at their beliefs, their patterns that they was exhibiting, and then outlined the resources that they needed to get to where essentially they wanted to be. Now, Katie up there on the left. So her aim was that she was looking to get promoted. Now, she'd previously been a manager, yet she didn't have a good experience with this. It's like at the time she wasn't set up for success. It was a little bit rushed. And because of this, she had a severe limiting belief about her capabilities as a leader. And we explored these experiences. We outlined her vision, what she felt as though good leadership looks like. We looked at her past experiences before then building up the plan to basically make it happen. Both the promotion into a leadership position as well as the plan for once she got there. So she did get it. She got promoted and she landed with her new team with a plan in hand to basically make it so she could successfully restart her leadership journey. Rahana, she was overworked incredibly. I personally do not know how she was doing this. So she was working unsociable hours. She was working 12 to 14 hours a day. She had very little personal time and absolutely no time for development. Now, just in our first 2 sessions, she was able to cut her meeting time by around 60%. And all this was just looking down at her beliefs around the reason why she felt as though she needed to attend every single session. And her belief was that she needed to be there to add value. She needed to be there to guide others and help others. Whereas the reality was there was a lot that she discovered that she could actually delegate out to people, which was helping her in 2 capacities. One, it was freeing up all her time, but the other, it was also developing her as a leader. What we then did is work on a pathway to basically land her new role, which after our engagement concluded, she landed. And then we have James. So James, I've actually informally worked with him for about 10 years before he worked with me in a formal capacity. And this is when he's kind of truly flourished. And it was because of his limiting beliefs. Again, limiting beliefs. Now, we couldn't explain this. He'd be going out and doing demonstrations to clients, C-suite executives, and perfectly fine. Wouldn't even bat an eyelid at this. He would be smashing it out the park. But whenever he spoke in an internal group, whenever some of his leaders were present, he'd get nervous, he'd clam up, he'd stall, stutter. And it was interesting because he had no idea why this was happening. So we explored some of the underlying beliefs, explored some of what he foresaw as being the worst case scenarios, and then begun to build up a plan, ways that he could begin to experiment with it in smaller settings. And I think for that, once we really understood the reasons why he was actually doing this, like the fact that they didn't have any substance, that's when he kind of really started flying. So all of these people, the common theme throughout all of them is that they was experiencing stagnation. They had these limiting beliefs. They had little to no firm clarity on a pathway forward, and he was focusing on the path whilst wanting the results. Again, emphasizing my point right at the start and throughout, that we're not alone when we think we're experiencing some of these self-doubt. What they essentially needed was two things. It was a plan, and they needed accountability. These then teased out some of the other areas that we spoke about. Things like presence, awareness, discipline, self-regulation, all while using some of the check-ins that we had to overcome some of these challenges, like as the beliefs popped up, beginning to dispel them. So I flashed this up before I dived into the detail. And this is, in essence, a little bit of a secret ingredient kind of thing. Now, I deliver a lot of workshops and one-on-one coaching, and what I did was pondered, so how can I lift some of that and bring it into a setting that is cost-effective and that is scalable, but then also delivers the value and the results for the people that I work with? And this is where I start to play around with a platform. So what this is the end-to-end journey. I've begun to map out and think, in these engagements, what is it that I typically do with the people that I work with? And it was following this kind of set pathway. So I then thought, okay, we've got specific issues, specific challenges, like imposter syndrome, for instance. Can I develop a series of exercises, workbooks, masterclasses that actually help with that specific challenge? And that's where the platform came in. That I've begun to develop these assets and grow them and grow them and grow them. And the thing is with this, I also then start to think, well, one of the main issues that people are telling me that they have is that there's this busy world and overload of information. So the last thing I want to do is basically throw more resources, more information at people. So then I thought, how can I help people to shortcut this? And this is where the accelerators here came into play. So what this essentially is, what it is that I've been building, is a series of step-by-step instructions on how people can level up, whilst also still getting some of the accountability that I personally, and evidently the people that I work with, are benefiting from. Because the more people we have to point the finger and say, why haven't you done this? The better it is for us, because we feel more compelled to take action. So in building this little platform, it's blossomed in only this last few months as well. It started off as being just a platform for hosting a load of exercises and videos and masterclasses, to one that has this whole hand-holding within it. And it's a whole bunch of exercises, workbooks, journals, little flashcards that you can use to help your reflection. And these are the accelerators. I started off creating just this one. Now, this one is around career acceleration. It's all the different facets of career growth. Under each one of these, there's just a few different exercises underneath each one. But then I thought, well, the thing is, this just isn't oriented around career. People also need help applying some of this stuff to their life. Maybe developing a habit of mindfulness. Maybe also different facets of career too. Maybe some specialist skills. And this is where I've begun to think, well, my expertise is within the Salesforce platform. So could I potentially do something there too? Now that I haven't done yet. But these accelerators are that ability to absorb knowledge quicker. So that's what I've had fun building. So what it is that I know that we need to do, and a question to ponder, is what is your intention for being here? And I don't mean necessarily here in this session. I mean just here on this earth. Solidify your destination as well. And we can do that using powerful psychological techniques to help you as well to understand and identify some of the patterns that may be preventing your progress. that ability to sit and pause and say, so what are the habits that I've adopted that maybe aren't serving me well right now? And again, this is the power of the reflection. Then on the back of this, defining the new beliefs and the new patterns can actually enable growth. Then the key part is building out your plan for growth. Then in terms of me, my platform, accountability as group members. Embarking on that continual journey of reflection. Now, in addition to one-on-one coaching, I've run a lot of group sessions too. And these are actually a core part of my work. Some of the feedback is here. And I find it humbling that people actually say here, particularly the mindfulness sessions, that they are incredibly valuable, often life-changing, which is incredible to hear. But that intangible feedback isn't the only thing that I've got and that I've explored. So some of this is based on one initiative that I run. We do a pre-survey, we run the event, and then we do a post-survey after an embodiment period of the practices that we instill. And you can see some of the stark difference in results. One of the most important there on the right-hand side, self-awareness, a massive increase in people realizing that they are thinking in a negative way and that are able to transition their thoughts to the positive. There's the self-control, pausing before reacting. And this is the mindfulness side of things. It's the side that kickstarted the passion for me in this space. Now, as I mentioned before, it's this journey, this process that I take people through. Starting off with the intention, the insight, the patterns, the resources, all these things to basically help people to grow. Before then planning, committing, and continue to evolve around the specific goals. Reflecting. And the wrapper that sits around is basically the platform. And there's one person that I just want to mention. So Isosa. So Isosa was an apprentice. He started working with me about 2.5 years ago when we fell into a coaching relationship. And I look at Isosa and think, if everybody had Isosa's mindset, the world would be in an amazing place. If he doesn't know the answer to something, he goes and learns it. He was doing a demonstration for a customer a couple of weeks ago and ended up winning the deal. He didn't know that area of the platform just 2 months ago. He said that I want to become an expert in this. So he went off and became an expert in this. And now you can see him there holding an award. It makes me proud because he works so hard. Now he credits his success to me being his coach, but I always tell him it's not me, the one who's learning this stuff. It's not me who is speaking to the clients. It's not me who is completing the degree. It's you. Yeah, I might be the guy on the sidelines who's helping him to see things that he maybe can't see. But it's down to him. That's basically the role of a coach. So we followed this exact process. We explored his ambitions, the intentions, including that of our time together. We looked at the shared understanding around his current experiences before, then identifying the patterns and beliefs which was basically limiting or potentially supporting some of his progress too. We identified the resources to help him to get through some of the challenges. This specifically was things like projects, it was courses, it was people in the business who might be a mentor to him. We then built up what the long game was. It's actually currently in progress at the moment. He's still thinking about what his future holds. He's only young, so he's got a long way to go. But, this has been pretty much the same process for everybody else. The only difference being the end goal is different. Whether it's a promotion, whether it's work-life balance, whether it's control, de-stressing, goal setting, basically the same. And the majority of the time, it's the same beliefs, the same patterns. It's just the resources may be a little bit different at times. So some things to add here. So these are just some top tips. So orient around emotionally intelligent-based skills with a foundation in self-awareness. That self-awareness is so important to our growth. The more space we're creating for ourselves, the better we will become. Make sure that we're reviewing progress on a regular basis. This is from both the wins, but also the learning opportunities. Spend more time with those wins. Now, break your ambitions down to enable frequent action. As I mentioned before, 10 small steps are better than one big one. And on the back of that, ensure that you build a habit of celebration. This will help you to overcome limiting beliefs, help you to overcome that imposter syndrome, that overthinking, if you're making this a daily habit. Challenge them. When they occur, challenge them. Recognize that these limiting beliefs, they are only your reality if you choose to let them. And then on that note, just remember, only compare yourself to one person, and that's you from yesterday. Now, as outcomes here, I teach people the techniques to stop them focusing mostly on what did not work and instead focus on what did. And hopefully a lot of that has come through today, that you're taking that away as a key lesson. I teach them to stop seeking validation from others. Focus on their own journey. It's your journey. There's nobody in the world that has the same experiences as you. The same thoughts, the same upbringing, the same background, the same resources. There's nobody in the world who has all of that. So only compare yourself to you of yesterday. I help people to question their own beliefs and behaviors. And now hopefully this session is helping you to do that. So rather than falling victim, begin to notice and take action against them. I help them to build out a plan of action, a journey of accountability. This again could be something that you're working on from this session. And then there's the people skills. Key message that has come across from this session. Develop emotional intelligence, people skills. Now, I mentioned early on that there was an exercise that was so incredibly simple, but so powerful for you to take away here. Now, on a regular basis, write down a list, get a piece of paper and split it in two. On one half, list of successes. On the other half, list of learning opportunities. It could be for the day, could be for the week, could be year, could be your life that you do this for. The first thing you'll notice is the successes, there'll be a lot more of them than there will be the learning opportunities. And that's a win, because that's looking at the imposter syndrome and basically sticking two fingers up at it. But then if we begin to focus in on those successes and remind ourselves on a daily basis about these, this is when we can begin to quieten that inner voice, that inner critic. And we can even go a step further and say, of these few learning opportunities that I have here, I actually did X, Y, Z to resolve them, and that turned them into a win. So what we're doing is just completely diminishing those imposter syndrome demons. A very simple but very powerful exercise if we make this a habit. Now, as we get near towards the end of today, so I know how passionate you are about your career and basically what you do. But we need to get where your belief systems are supporting you, whilst also ensuring that you continue to grow. So what I'm about to show you is for you if you want someone to personally help you to grow and accelerate key aspects of your career and life. As I mentioned before, we have a whole bunch of accelerators here that enable people to develop emotional intelligence skills to overcome those limiting beliefs, to understand some of the intricacies of personal development. This is using tried and tested methods. It's enabling you to do things like take back control, to be more proactive, and to look to eliminate procrastination. Now, we've explored this flow before. I move forward too quickly. But what this on screen here, is a video of the platform. Now, this is just a sample of what's included. Like, there's the search function to allow immediate access to resources around things like imposter syndrome. Could be an ebook, could be a course, could be a live session that is upcoming. Anything that's like an ebook, an essay, it's all downloadable. So it doesn't need internet access to use at least in the aftermath. I've gone for a similar layout. So there's actually, it could have had it as Disney Plus, could have had it as Netflix. So it's a Netflix style thing. So a bit of familiarity with people, with all these different assets, workbooks for people to consume. Now, this that's coming up now is the accelerators. So there's actually a couple more that's live at the moment, but the one that we'll be showing in a second is basically around the career accelerator. But you can see there's different ones here that are based on different elements of life. This being the career booster. Underneath each one is then a few of the different steps of here's something for you to consume. But the thing is, as I said earlier, I didn't want to overwhelm people with information. I didn't want to add to that problem. So what's actually coming with this is what are called quick bite videos. So it's something that embedded within each one of these will be a very short snippet, getting straight to the point of what the element of this exercise, this masterclass, this workbook could actually be. So you're getting basically straight towards the action. In here too, there's whole elements around upcoming events. I'll talk in a moment about what comes with this. So there's various elements of engagement that I have available here. But all told, currently there's around about 100 different workbooks, journals, exercises that are actually live in this experience. But the intention is that this is something that continually grows, continually evolves, new accelerators being added, new exercises, and so on. There's about 80 in the backlog at the moment that are all going through some level of branding. I mentioned before about the accelerators. So mindfulness is one that's coming up, probably one of my best ones. There's also ones relating to career, life, foundational elements, health, so on. There will be eventually live group coaching, masterclasses, things around pointed topics, discussions in the group that I mentioned before, guided meditations, access to all the previous recordings that we've done. And, you know, this is the foundation of it, as we've seen before. So this is everything within the success package that I'm currently offering. It's a rolling membership. You can either go for a monthly or a 12-month one. This is the price that I'm offering this at. It's going to be starting around about mid-January, but there's a whole bunch of resources already live to basically be kicking on with. $997 for the year and $97 for the month. And if I had access to all of this many years ago, I'd find myself in an even better place, which is why I'm deciding to offer this. Now, I have appointments available. I'm only accepting people if we have a discussion beforehand with this, because I want to make sure the program is a right fit for you as much as it is for me. I want to make sure that you're going to get the value out of this. But the thing is, I only have availability for tomorrow. So the first 5 people who sign up, I will honor this. The first people who sign up will get a one-on-one coaching session with me. However, I am going on holiday on Wednesday. So me and the family are going to Disneyland, and then there's the festive period. and then we're going to Iceland in the new year. So it's going to be a period of time when I'm not actually available to have any of these calls. Now, in terms of the experience, you can still 100% dive in, and there's a load of assets and information live, so you can really tuck in and go to town on it. But I thought to myself, given that I'm only available tomorrow, that doesn't really give you much flexibility to schedule the time with me. So I'm going to give free access to the Career Accelerator. So if you want to scan that QR code, what it will take you to is an account registration form. And that accelerator that was up on screen earlier, it will basically be a sign-up screen to get complete free access to basically that accelerator. And with that, you get all the different assets with it as well, to go and explore, have fun, and to just play around and learn something new and get value from this thing. So this is a summary of where we've come from. So what we spoke about is misalignment. We've spoke about this lack of progress that people are often experiencing, about this self-doubt, this overload of information that results in basically stagnation in personal and professional life, performance issues, and lack of control. I've offered a whole load of tips, a whole load of guidance around these things. I always want to add value to the people that are attending these calls. And some of the things we spoke about is presence, discipline, self-regulation, developing that pathway forward. So knowing where it is you're heading, what your North Star is, building the mindset. And what this means is with owning our awareness, owning our growth. And in turn, this turns everything around. It makes it so we're aligned, we're making progress, we're confident. There's less noise. We're able to cut through the noise. We're more in control. We're able to perform better. We actually get the acceleration that we want. So as I mentioned, by all means, you can go and set up some time with me. I would very much welcome to have a chat with any of you tomorrow. But if you want to go in, explore, give that a scan, create your account, and you'll be able to go in and have a look at the accelerator, have a play around with that. And there will always be the options to explore more in the new year when I come back. And that's when in the new year that we're going properly live with this. That's when we're going in with the masterclasses, we're going in with the live sessions and so on. It's a really exciting journey. So I just want to thank you all for your time this evening, for listening in, for tuning in. And I really hope that you have taken a lot away from this. My intention, as I say, is always to add value to people who come along to some of these sessions to explore with me and to basically listen to some of my experiences and so on. If you do have any questions, please do either just drop me an email. My email's on the website. Just drop me a message on LinkedIn. Whatever works for you. And I wish you all a happy holidays and all the best for the new year.